Can you start that? Awesome.
There we go. Okay. Okay, so for the recording purposes, the only thing I've done is gone to grants.tasa.org, which when you do that, it'll forward you to the more complicated true name of the site. Don't worry about that. Grants.tasa.org will get you there. And we'll log in. Which will bring you to what should be very familiar to everybody, if not most of y'all. Nothing has changed here. What has changed are, I think, what I consider 4 activities or processes. Your request for reimbursement, the form has changed. $0 RFR has also changed. The location of corrections to RFRs has moved into SalesForce, and budget adjustments, that whole process has now moved into SalesForce as well. So we'll get started looking at the RFR changes first. So like normal, you just click on your same grant, but our big green button is now replaced by a smaller blue button. Briefly while I'm here, so Tim doesn't yell at me, the Files tab is back. It's still slightly under construction, but if you ever hear us refer to like, oh, that you can go find that in your Files tab, that's here. This is a example file, like this is an example record, but yours will have some array of contracts, job descriptions. Remind me what else? Every iteration of your budget that happens as well.
Contract is in there.
Gotcha.
For SAPs folks, it'll be your application for this year and all of those accompanying documents. For ARP folks, it will just be your contract, any new application, any new job descriptions or resolutions that you sent us this year. To see your application, you'd have to go back to your FY23 grant record.
Yeah, but that is also in the same spot, or should be in the same spot. Yeah, other disclaimer I forgot to say, with this pretty major update to certain structures, some things are still very much under construction as like cascades from that. So nothing that we're interacting with today that I'm showing you today will change. This should stay the same. However, you might notice little different things like that changing over time, like with instructions and things on the periphery. So anyway, let's go look at RFRs. So now you have to click a button which will forward you to where those buttons live. Here we are. So requesting a reimbursement, whether it's real dollars or whether you're requesting a true reimbursement or a $0 reimbursement, all lives in this button now. There's also the RFR correction form, which used to live, for those of you who may have used it, used to live outside of SalesForce, and in a form assembly form is now in here as well. So let's go look at all 3. I'm saying to remind myself because I forgot the $0 yesterday. Let's see. Okay, so everyone say a cheer. October is no longer the default. Yay! So now the very first thing you will do is select your month. So it is now month and year specific, and it will only populate what you should have available to only months you haven't submitted something for that also haven't occurred yet. So you'll notice it's November now. There's only up to November. As soon as it hits December 1, December should appear as well here, all the way through till the end of this grant year. Once it becomes the new grant year, it'll be a whole new different set and a whole new different grant. So don't be surprised when we like come towards the end of the year that it stops showing up. It's just going to be a little different now. So for demo purposes, let's look at October, and you'll say start or continue. Oh, what's that? We're going to find out in a second. We have a save feature now. But this, while colored a little bit differently, it's still pretty much the same thing. But it reminds you which grant you're in, which I think wasn't the case before. And for those of you who have either like multiple ARP and SAS grants or multiple ARP grants, that might be helpful to you. There's also a reminder of which month you're in case you happen to get behind or something happens. Just there's more reminding you of what's going on at any point in time, which is nice because I don't think we had this before. Anyway, new feature is you can actually, this says filter, but it's like functionally a search of all the records. I like this because though this isn't an odd order, you can filter it by a category like personnel or by a keyword that might be in the budget name like counselor. So that, although this test record only has 4 budget line items, I know some of y'all have like up to 40, so that should be pretty helpful for you once you're filling out requests. Now, you might think that you can click into this blank. For some reason, Salesforce does not want us to do that. But so to add a request amount, you click on this, the arrow on the far right of each one of the lines and click add, which will pop up this little guy. That has some reminders of the amount originally budgeted, the pending and already reimbursed amount, and then the available remaining amount. So request amount, and this is a big change, will prevent you from, will not allow you to request above what amount you have available after everything that's requested, whether it's already been processed or whether it's in review and pending. So literally it will tell you no, and then it will not let you save, which I won't do because it'll give a whole bunch of red I don't feel like looking at. So what you do is type your actual amount and click save. And it'll add right here. So I'll go back in to show you that there are a couple other things in here. Sorry, that was a little fast. So once again, go to your budget line item, to the arrow to the right, and click add. Pop-up comes up, and you can request an amount or anything. But there are 2 things that were not there before. First of all, you can now comment stuff to us. Peggy has gently requested that I give context to what you should give us context for, and it's anything that is unusual, truly unusual. So say, I know last year we had one example of a grantee that had a steady monthly rent amount, and then all of a sudden, I think they signed a new lease and their rent amount was paid every 6 months rather than every 1 month. So instead of $1,500, it was whatever 6 times 1,500 is. So that would be a good example of hey, we know we usually request $1,500 for rent. Here's why that amount has spiked, and it shouldn't be this way for the rest of the year because we've just paid 6 months rent. Unusual cases like that. You don't have to do this for say if you have mileage, and that probably, I assume, naturally varies month to month. Some nights are just busier than others, or just have different needs than others. That's kind of understandable. But yeah, Peggy, do you have any more context you'd like to give to that, or is that okay? Okay. Peggy approved.
Very good.
All right, so comments. I love this because I feel like a lot of the times people email us and we're like, what is this in regards to when it comes to context here? So anyway, the other thing that moved here, like I mentioned before, is RFR corrections. So rather than a separate form, RFR corrections now go relying on line item, assuming that you have a specific line item that you have over requested or under requested from a prior month that you want to correct. So I'll show you what this will look like. It's not basically all you have to do is say yes, and then that tool will pop up down here with some instructions that you can read on your own time when you're whenever you might need to use this. But basics of it are, it will explain to you what to do. There's a spot for explanations, but the first thing you have to do is choose which prior month for this specific line item that you want to correct. So once again, you can't click the blank for some reason, so look for the big blue buttons generally. That's what's going to get you to where you want to go. And you'll search for a record. This is blank because it's a brand new grant year. What would happen is, say in April, you have to correct this line item, and you'll have anywhere. You'll have however many months it is from October to March to see in here. Like however many times you've requested something from this line item will appear here, and you can click on that to be like, this one was wrong, and then give us the numbers that it should have been and the reason for what happened, and you'll be able to save. There are some scenarios in which this process can't correct it, but you know, email us as always, and there's instructions right here. So I'm going to click this back to no, and it'll disappear, which you can also do if you change your mind or you realize that something is wrong. So let's save that amount. And now we have a couple of amounts to request. So I'll briefly show you the save part of this. So I said at the beginning, there's save or continue RFR. So at 2 points in this process, right, we've built in reviewable features now. So at 2 points in this process, you can save your progress and it'll kick you back to the beginning of the process. So I'll just show you that. So say, I know some of you have like a multi-step review process when you're submitting RFRs, or just, you know, you start this and then you get a phone call and you can't finish it in that time. Your work is not lost anymore. You can just hit save and don't worry about it. So to continue a form, go exactly back to the same spot, which I'll show you from home because it's a little bit different than it was before. Which I might regret because this is very slow loading today. So same deal as before. Look for where your big green button would have been before. Go click on your grant, click this little open budget button, and click request for reimbursement. Which will open your same month select dropdown, but this time October says in progress, which indicates to us that we have saved and are ready to continue a request for reimbursement. So we'll select that guy. And our amounts have remained the same. So from here, we can do a couple things. We can just continue to review, which is at the bottom of the page in our little footer bar. We can actually edit these amounts too. It'll say add, but it's just we just didn't rename that button yet, apparently. And you can change the request amount. You can add a correction, do whatever while this is in its basically draft form while you are working on it. Or you can add new additional amounts, you know, as if you were finishing what you had started. So we'll leave it like that. While I'm here, I forgot already, but the $0 request for reimbursement button is down in this footer now, meaning that no matter, I think I said this before, but no matter what kind of request you're doing with actual money you're requesting, or if you happen to have a $0, I don't think that's going to apply very often, but if you do, it's down here. So either way, you select your month first and before you do anything with it, with that month, and then you tell us what you want to do with that month. So we won't do that, but we will continue to review. Once again in the footer bar. So now we have a review page, which will show you every single change you've made, changes being every single budget line item that you've added an amount for. It'll show you some totals. I think a second time, I think it shows totals before, and the number of line items. So you have a couple of ways to check your work that are just kind of quick for you. The only reason these are different colors is because we saved and continued. So these two in gray were added before we saved and then went back in. This green is just showing you that this is a new change to the form, but you know, so maybe that'll help as well. You'll notice there's a save progress button up here in this big indigo looking bar. So it's in a different spot weirdly, but that's where it is here. So you can do the same exact thing from this page, save progress. It'll boot you out of the form and you can return to it anytime you want. So we are going to instead submit. Now here's our big green button, it's back, which will submit the form, and that's it. Whenever it resolves. Are there any questions on that process? Whether in chat or out loud?
No questions in the chat.
Okay. So this is being weird, but I'm going to go back to the home page. Oop. All right. Wonderful. Okay, good. I'm on a Zoom call, so I doubt my internet is bad. I feel like we have some more obvious signs. All right. So we've handled RFR is different, $0 RFR button has moved, and then correcting RFRs. The last thing is budget adjustments, which you may have seen the button for. So now to make a budget adjustment, you click on the grant you want to submit an adjustment for. On the right side, click our new blue button to forward to the page on which these live. And then budget adjustment request is the other blue button right here. So we'll click that guy and meet a new tool. And here we are. So there are, rather than the Excel sheet process that took a while and we were all very accident prone within it because it's an Excel sheet, it's just kind of loose. This allows you to do two major things. You can move funds between budget line items on this tab. And if you click this tab, you can add a new budget line item. That's it. There's two things. And it only asks you for the information that you need, and it will only let you move money that you have. So let's demo that, shall we? We're going to start by adding a new budget line item for the sake of it. Let's say, I always default to like laptops, but laptops. I feel like half of y'all have laptops at some point. Why not? So type of budget line item name. Select the category. I think this is supplies. And then type a brief justification as to how this will support grant activities. Just like you did in the initial budget, it's the same type of justification. And TASA, like if you should submit something here that TASA staff need more context for, we'll reach out to you before like approving it. For now, I'm going to do something that you should never tell Peggy because this is not enough context. I just am amusing myself. And then you hit submit new line item request to the bottom right. So it is one at a time with adding new line items. It will also be one at a time with moving funds, but that means that it can do real-time math for you and tell you exactly how much money you have to move as you're moving stuff. So we've added a new budget line item. And it's got $0 in it, which is a problem. So to add stuff into it, we learned yesterday that you have to refresh the page in order for them to appear. So basically, we've got these blue buttons again because you can't click the blanks. I'm going to refresh the page so that our new line item that we just added will show up. And all it is there's on the move funds page, there are some minimal instructions, which are mostly like, hey, if you have trouble, email us. But there's a subtract funds from and an add funds to section. That's pretty much it. So we'll search for that laptops 4. See, I did it twice. Laptop 4 with, you'll see the status is a pending. This is not approved yet. And there's no remaining budget here because there's no budget to begin with. So sorry about that. We'll click the button, the like radio button next to it. And this dollar sign right here, if this had an amount associated with it, there'd be not a 0. And we'll move from laptop to laptop. Why not? We'll select laptops 4. This might be confusing. I hope not. And you'll see that it says there's $6,000 from which we can move money. And it'll remind us in this big orange bubble here as well how much money we have to move. So I'll just move some of that. And you can provide, or you are required to provide context for why you're moving this over. This is nonsensical. So I'm just going to put like something so it doesn't yell at me, and we can submit it with the big blue button at the bottom right. And now we'll see at the bottom a list of the pending requests has showed up. So now that we have a dollar amount associated with the transfer, it's here. It is like the very second request ever. Wow. So what you will do is as many transfers as you have to move, keep going until you're done. Because this, and in fact, I just heard the email notification, and Peggy might have as well, but this emails us as soon as you request budget adjustments. So rather than the back and forth of emails and the Excel sheet, let's add like one more for the sake of choosing it. I should announce what I'm doing. So let's select something to subtract funds from. Not much in the way of stuff to move from to and from. Just select what you're gonna move funds from. Again, it'll remind you how much money you have to move. Click the blue button to select where you want to move money to. And it'll give you the amounts of both of these where this is the remaining amount. It doesn't look like it because they're because this is a new grant year and there's not any requests made, but if you are midway through the grant year, say this will only show you what remaining funds you have and therefore exactly what you should, like your exact context at any given point in time, right? So let's just put an amount, a reason, and submit it, and you'll see it show up at the bottom half of the page. And there you go. And it also totals everything that you've, every dollar that you've requested to move. I think that's it for this section. I feel like I'm forgetting something, but I'm not sure. Probably about what this implies for the process of like the kind of the month-to-month workflow of requesting reimbursements. That's what it is. So because these restrict so much based on amount, like it will also, just like in the RFR process, if I were to try to move funds from something that there were none to move, it would yell at me and not let me proceed. If I try to transfer more than the allotted amount, like more than the remaining amount, it'll also turn red and yell at me. All of this means that the whole budget adjustment process has to be before your RFR if you know you're going to go over on an amount. However, it should be easier, at least because instead of having to find the Excel sheet, having to find the right budget, sometimes in the case of, I know SASP has been kind of back and forth last year, but you'll just be able to go in on your own at your own time and get even halfway done the same way, because this is pretty forgiving in terms of what you can, like, it doesn't require you to do all of it at once. So yeah, basically, as soon as you know you are going to need a budget adjustment, and you will need a budget adjustment every time that you are expecting to need to request more funds than are remaining in any budget line item, get on this ASAP, please. And if you need help with this, like, it's simple, but it's new. So it's okay that, like, if you want some support, please reach out to us as soon as you know you're going to need some help. And I'm like, I personally am happy because this is my job, you know, so I personally am happy to walk you through this process any old time. I think that is it for this section, though. Any questions on this or anything related to the portal that I've got you?
What is the expected turnaround time for budget adjustment requests with this new system? Like, let's say we know that we're going to need a budget adjustment. I know with some of our other grants, the system will be held up if we submit the adjustment. So like we'll wait until that billing cycle goes through and then we'll submit the adjustment. So with this one, like, if we know that we're going to, what is like the date in the month when we would need to have it submitted if we want to still be able to bill on time, like on the 15th?
I can jump in on that if you want, Marissa. So
yeah, go for it.
So I think this is where like communication is going to be important. If you can give us a heads up that something like that is coming, generally we can probably do it in, like, we should be able to, we will be prioritizing this, so we should be able to do them in in 2 to 3 days, unless something unusual is going on, you know, holidays, that kind of stuff. Those would be the kind of things that would hold that process up. But generally, we should be able to process those in 2 to 3 days. That's the other thing that this does, is it streamlines it on our end. We'll have a couple of people who will look at it, but all they have to do is go into Salesforce. They're going to get an email letting them know that somebody made a request to like a budget adjustment request, and just have to go in and review it in here and just change the status and then move it on to the next person. So you know, for ARP, it'll be Peggy, and then our finance person, Roger. And then for SASP, it'll be Annette, and then Roger. So we, again, we should be able to turn them around in 2 to 3 kind of like business days in most cases. And the one thing, Allison, that I think, just to kind of reiterate what Marissa said, like if your request is going to go over on any line item over what you have available, you won't be able to submit that unless you do a budget adjustment. So just kind of keeping that in mind. So it could mean, you know, if you wait until like the day that, like if you wait until the 15th, you might have to end up submitting that after the 15th deadline, or keeping that line item out if you're waiting until the 15th to do a budget adjustment request. And again, we can try to address those on the same day, but as much heads up as we can get, you know, if you just know you're going to go over, even if you don't have a chance to get in there, to give us a heads up that might be coming. We'll do our best to try to do them same day. We just can't guarantee that, kind of depending on what else is going on.
So Tim, there's a question in the chat. How do we know if it's approved or rejected?
Yes. So one thing is, like I said, a lot of this is under construction because this just happened a week ago live. So now I can actually get in there and add things like reports to tell you which, to show you about the pending line items. But besides seeing it here, they will disappear or they should disappear as soon as they're approved. I don't know if it just changes them to approved, actually. Hold that. Where you can for sure see it is, and I'm saying all this because it's on my radar to make this easier for everybody, because I know it's not super easy to see when things are like pending either, is from your grant. I think you have to go into budget. Yeah, like I want to move it to here so it's easier, but for now, you can go into budget and see if that's, oh, okay, interesting. I didn't know it would go in the description. And see if your amounts are changed. Likewise, in the request for reimbursement section, you can see if the amounts are updated or not. I think, I'm trying to remember if we talked about this explicitly, but in terms of internal processes, what I'm going to do is once the budget is once the budget adjustment is approved internally, I'm going to take the same way that back in the files, we're planning on having your budget, every iteration of your budget in the files. So we can also email you when your adjustment's completed and approved. Yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a messy answer, but ideally we'll email you. If not, you can see it anywhere that you can see your budget line item amounts. And I'm planning on making a report for that. So that's very much under construction, but I know that I think at least one of you has to submit one like the first month. I don't remember if that person might be here or not, but sorry.
And so just kind of a reminder as to like why the timeline for submitting RFRs are in place. I know that probably you have all heard this, but just a reminder, kind of our process internally is that once we have all of your requests for reimbursement, then we're reviewing them as they come in. Once we get them all approved, then we submit for reimbursement. And then once we're reimbursed, that's when we're able to reimburse y'all. So we just don't have it like that where we could just reimburse, you know, without having that reimbursement in our accounts. So that's kind of what the timeline is in place, is to try to limit the amount of time between you submitting an RFR, a request for reimbursement, and us being able to actually reimburse you. So each of our funders are a little bit different. So generally what we're doing is by the 18th, we are, well, by the 16th, 17th, or 18th, depending on kind of when stuff has come in, we're trying to submit our reimbursement to our funders, so to the governor's office for SASP or to HHSC for our as quickly as we can, so that we can cut down that wait time between your reimbursement. The governor's office is usually quicker. They're usually within a couple of weeks, 3 weeks. So, you know, for October, for example, if you submit by November 15th, then we're getting that reimbursement, and we're usually able to reimburse like early in December, sometimes even the last week of November. HHSC sometimes is that fast, but sometimes it takes them up to a month. So it can be as early December, but lots of times it's more like mid-December. You know, somewhere around the 18th, depending on when we submit our reimbursement. So that means if you're submitting for October on November 16th, you're not actually getting included into our reimbursement request until the next month. And so that's why there can be a delay, and why we have that timeline in place. And so I think that's the one thing that these changes around the budget adjustment and not being able to go over your line item, you know, just to be mindful of those and to give yourselves a couple of days at least to make sure that something you're submitting isn't going to go over a line item where you're then going to have to request a budget adjustment and get that approved. I hate having to be so kind of strict on that timeline, but again, we're trying to get money back out to programs as quick as possible and not have, you know, most of the programs held up for one or two programs that are a little bit late. So, any kind of questions on the changes, the processes so far?
I just wanted to also make sure I'm understanding like the move funds function. Let's say that we're adding, you know, that line item for laptops. And we want to add $4,000 to that line item, but it's not coming from one specific item in the budget. It's coming from like, we're not traveling as much as we thought, so we're taking $1,000 out of mileage reimbursements and $1,000 out of office supplies and $1,000 out of like a fringe line item and moving that to the laptops. Would that then be like 3 different items that we're adding, like one for each place where the money is coming from?
Yes, that would be. Yeah. So let's look at something I've added money to. Counselor one. Yeah.
So you just add laptops one time if it was a new line item, but then you would move money from each time you move money from a different category, you would have to go through this process. Is that what you're saying, Marissa?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'd have to go through, say, I've already selected the laptop. So say we wanted to move money from counselor one in personnel and fringe, and then also accounting consultant to the other laptops for line item. Yeah, so you just select as much as you want from this one. I know sometimes let's put some realistic numbers. It'll be like 5103. That's more than the sort of thing we keep seeing. So you got 5103 coming from counselor one to the laptop to help. So you'd submit that one.
So Just one thing that we've learned a lot about is the limitations of Salesforce. And we're
Yeah.
running into one of those here. The one thing you'll notice is that the line item that you're moving funds to, if you're moving it from different places, and one of them is like, which means each request is pending, it will not, the dollar sign amount that it says is available in that line item doesn't update until they're approved. So you'll have to kind of keep track. I don't know if that's making sense. So Marissa, if you pick that same laptop,
I was gonna say, let me make sure that's true, because I thought it was pending. No, it's live.
if
So
you if you go back to the budget adjustment request and you pick the laptop line item for move funds to.
Okay.
So you can see there's already.
Yeah, so there's on the far right over here, you can see there's credits. That's the total of, that's the best we got right now within this tool for what you've moved total, or what you're requesting to move total into this line item.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying,
So,
Tim?
yeah, but like if you click on it and click, like, pick it, the line above it still, that's the one place where it's not showing up.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So it'll show you when you're picking it, when you're picking that line item, it'll show you how much you have already asked to move over but hasn't been approved. But then once you come back to this page, that total is not showing up. So we can see if we can fix that, but it again, Salesforce doesn't always do great on a bunch of complicated multi-step processes. So that just may be something to pay attention to, Allison, if you're doing something like that, is that when you go to pick the line item you want to move funds to, then that may be the only place where you can see, if you're pulling from multiple places, how much you've already asked to move. If that makes sense.
Another thing is in doing this process, I'm noticing that that's currently the only place that you can see your credits and debits. Like, this is a laundry list of your changes that you've made, but there's not really a way right now to see your pending new budget, is what I'll call it, with kind of the summary of what all your line item amounts will be. However, that is now on my radar as something to work on pretty quickly, because I know some, like, we're grants are underway enough that budget adjustments will probably start happening sooner than they did last year. So I'll make that a priority in the portal to try to figure out a way with our contractor to see what your updated budget is, possibly in a new tab up here is what I'm thinking. But I'll cook on that and make that easier, because this is, these are all new tools, meaning that we're finding the new problems. But that also means that, like, if you say, hey, this is really cool and all, but I can't see my new budget and it's really hard to figure out what's going on, which is an assumption I'm making right now. But, like, if it were me, then please email us those feedback pieces too, because we can't fix every single thing. Every system will have some quirks that are just kind of like not beyond our scope of fixing. However, we want to improve your quality of grant lifecycle life. And you got to tell us when there are problems, because some of them I can figure out myself, and some of them it's not me doing the process of requesting reimbursements and doing this day to day on top of everything else you guys have going on. So please, please, please let us know if there are any things that we can add, or like changes even to these like new things. Like, I'm not pretending this is perfect. It's just better than what we had before. That's kind of all we can hope for. So we want to make it as good as it can be for all of us. Yeah. Are there any other questions on?
Marissa?
Yes.
There was a question in the chat that I answered. Will you want to take a look at it and make sure I did it correctly?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Look. Let's see. Like this new format and how to. So can we do multiple at a time from several to one? Is this, sorry, several? I think, is that the same kind of question that Allison had? That you can move money from multiple line items to one?
Yes, you just have to do it by
Yes,
completing separate
yes,
processes. So
yeah,
there isn't a way to click several line items and move them all at once. You have to do it
yes.
by
Yeah,
the
so it's kind of,
process
yeah,
each time.
yeah. So you can see down here in the summary that I've added funds to the same line item 2 times. So there was $4,000 that came out of the old laptops 4 to laptop 4 line item. And then also I requested to move $51 from counselor 1 to laptop 4. You can do that for as many as you need to. I know sometimes, like, especially at the end of the year, you're like nickel and diming and moving every penny into something that you can use. So like that, you can absolutely do that. Reiterates the need for me to make a way that you guys can see what your new budget will be. But for now, you can see it in the add funds to actually either of these, I think, has the credits and debits, where the total amount that we've been moving money to this laptop 4 line item is way over here in the credit section. So this is, like I said, this is added up the 4,000 from one line item and 5103 from the other. And if we wanted to request more money to go into this, it would add up that too. So sure, why not? And the other way around as well. So you can do the same thing and move multiple, I think we need a category here. You can move money from the same line item over and over again as well, as long as you still have funds to request from. And the request from will update as you do this, as you'll see the remaining budget. Since these requested moves are pulled into kind of a limbo pending stage, these are not movable since you've already requested them. But you'll see that all of our remaining budget totals keep going down. So there are fail safes throughout the process to check that you're not moving money that isn't real anymore. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And then there's a follow-up.
Sure.
But there must be individual adjustments, correct? No way to move all in one adjustment.
Do you mean moving, say you want to zero out a line item, like if you, God forbid, but it happens, are not able to hire counselor 1, and want to completely move money out of that? Is that what you're asking?
No, I think it's connected to the earlier question. Like you have to make each individual budget adjustment.
Yes.
You can't do
Yeah.
multiple.
Yeah, you can't do like 3 at
times.
one. Yeah, unfortunately not. Yeah, I think because of the way that I think Salesforce is conceptualizing it as if there are literal piles of like, I don't know, like potatoes on the ground, and you have to have a handful of potatoes and put them in the new potato pile before. I don't know why potatoes, but yeah, unfortunately, sorry making light of this. That's annoying, but like that's kind of how it is. Is it literally is like you have to tell it where you're moving the potatoes that are in its little hands before moving on to telling it where the next bunch of potatoes is going to go.
And each
I hope that makes sense for
transaction,
people.
yeah,
Yes,
each one has
each
to
transaction
come from one and another
Yes.
and to go to one, right?
Yes,
It's
yeah.
yeah.
In adult terms, everything has to be accounted for. Yes, yeah. Every dollar amount that you're telling it to remove and put into limbo has to be accounted for before you tell it a different amount of money to put into limbo, because of the like live calculating. Yeah, so that is I think the one big trade-off to having a system that does it like this is that everything has to be a bit more manual like that.
It also helps cut down on errors.
Yes.
Like
yes.
It'll check all the math for you. And I know many of you love math like I do and love staring at numbers all the
exactly.
time. Well, you do it all day long. At some point, your eyes start to cross. So this takes some of that out of it. It wants to make sure, it also wants to make sure you haven't promised those potatoes to somebody else before you move to a new file. So it'll do all of that for you. Yeah, and so like Marissa said, it's a little step by step, and that's kind of the trade-off.
Yeah.
But you can do as many of those individual moves in one request. Like you don't have to just request one line item and wait for it to get approved. So if you need to change 3 line items, for one, you're moving from 3 places. For the other 2, you're just moving from one to the other. They're each individual requests, but you can do all those in one sitting, and we can approve them all at once. Like you don't have to wait for each individual one to get approved.
Any other questions? I don't see any, there's any more in the chat, Marissa.
Okay. Well, if there's nothing else, I think I'll stop sharing.
Oh,
And I will stop
Marissa.
recording.
Yeah.
I'm
Unless
sorry.
there's
Do you
something
want
from
me
y'all?
to show them the reports in the support section real quick? Even though I
Yeah,
know we
sure
need to
thing.
update it.
Yeah, I was like, support's pretty rough right now because we just fixed a bunch of stuff that we had to explain away in the support section. But so, because I don't know how often people use these, but if you ever need our records of any of these, for now, 4 things. These are just canned reports that at any point in time by grant, but if you need your budget by line item in one like exportable Excel sheet that can be formatted, or reimbursements by line item, reimbursements by month, I use a lot, so I'm going to go look at that. Or remaining funds by line item. These are just 4 canned reports that you can click on at any point in time, and it will give you the live updated thing, like data that's in Salesforce. So if you select one, it'll have one thing about the way this is that it has every grant year, but I think you can filter it. And if not, these are once again under construction. So I'm in this new grant year, I'm going through and auditing everything that we had last year and updating what needs updating. So this is from my testing last fiscal year. And what you do to export it is click export in the top right corner. You have 2 options of either a formatted report, which is easier to read, but if it's not so good if you're planning on like importing this to a different system for any reason, or you can just do details only, which gives you a simple CSV. No formatting whatsoever, but yeah, but it's not got any formatting to throw you off. So we would just click export here, and you get an Excel sheet downloading. I'm planning on adding some other reports, possibly making this a little bit more, well, this is the maximum number of drop-down items you could have, but I'm thinking about this going forward and planning on adding things for like all the budget adjustments that you might have requested, or all of the RFR corrections that you've made that are newly in Salesforce. So I have not yet had time to make reports of what happens because they haven't happened yet. There's also a support page that I'm a little afraid to click on because of this wall of text. But people haven't been using this a ton. That's okay. Like we've been happily responding to emails. If you ever want to go directly to me specifically or having an issue in the portal, you can use this. And there's a now outdated frequently asked questions page back here on the support tab for, these aren't actually that wrong. I was afraid these would be worse, but yeah, some basic instructions that some like request for reimbursement obviously has changed, but you guys know what's up with that. So I will be working on these. There are some answers to some questions that you may have here. Anything else?
The reporting tabs to the right are also something that like was
Yes.
did
Yeah,
you have a
these
chance
are...
up, or it was updated and then it got lost right when we
Exactly. Yeah. So this is now slightly outdated. We had for the, I know SASP, it's been outdated. I'm sorry about that. This is going to be fixed and updated with an actual link to the report that you guys have to fill out. ARP-SA, there's travel information missing, that, and I don't know if Peggy wants to talk about that very briefly. That happened a couple months ago where there were new travel policies.
Yeah, with the new travel policies, if anyone wants to travel out of state to an event like a conference, then that requires pre-approval. And I believe it's like at least 30 days before your travel. So when it gets back up here, there'll be a link to the form that you fill out. It'll come directly to us, and then we can let you know like when it's approved. But for right now, the travel policies, we've sent those out. And again, the link will be up here at some point in time. So you can fill that form out. It'll come to us, and we'll get back with you if we have any questions.
Yeah, we were waiting to change this over because we didn't want folks who were grantees from lot like folks had until the 30th to submit requests, and so we waited to launch. And then of course, as always, when you launch stuff, even when you've made changes, they just vanish into the air. So it's going to take us a little bit of time to get some of this updated, re-updated, I should say, from the changes that were lost when it went live. So the joys of technology, they work great for us, and sometimes they give us headaches too. But we'll also let folks know as as those things get updated. We can send out some emails to let folks know that information is new and or is current, and where they can go to find it.
So Jim, I'll let folks know that I'm going to stop the recording now. That's okay.